Okay, it's week 2, English 132. We're a good way into the week. I hope, almost done actually. I hope your week's going well. I hope the readings are going well. I hope you're enjoying in real life, and that you're moving along on your first writing assignment. This lecture is designed to help us think about that writing assignment, but also help us to think about composition, rhetoric, the whole point of this class, writing for college. So we're going to talk about a few things here. We're going to talk about the assignment. We're going to talk about the rhetorical situation, and we're going to talk about how we go about developing a connection between ourselves and others, which is really the goal of writing, a connection between ourselves and others. It's pretty much the goal of what we try to do in life, which is build connections. And writing is just one of those ways that we have of building connections, but it's a fairly profound and significant one, especially when we can think about what are the connections we're trying to build, how are we going to build those connections, and how do we use our skills and our talents to help us develop those connections. On your screen, you see a couple of types of connection. One comes from 1943. It's a postcard sent by somebody that's at home to a soldier that is off in war. Dear Michael, I miss you, darling, very much. You say you want to. You say you won't get for furlough. That's bad. Don't dream too much now. Hoping to hear from you real soon, sweetheart. As ever. And Jean. And then the connection on the right, the writing on the right, comes from Hinge, a hookup dating app. And we are looking here at the ways that different generations used writing to develop relationships. One of the things that I often hear from students is that they're not writers. They don't like writing. They don't use writing. They don't think they're not in a major that's going to be using writing. They can't see why they would use it in the future, but really that they just get stressed out when it comes to writing. But the truth of the matter is we use writing almost every day. And just think about the text messages you write, the social media that you're on, the ways that you write notes in classes, the notes that you might write on your kids' lunch before they go off to school, emails that you might send to your professor, papers that you might write for class. You are using writing every single day. And as somebody who uses writing every single day, you know a whole lot of the rules, a whole lot of the conventions. You're probably a much better writer than you think you are. Now, one of the problems that happens with writing is that when we try to build these connections, sometimes we lose sense of what is the connection that we're building or what is the situation that we're writing in. This goes back to an issue that I hope you talked about in your first writing class for college in English 131. I hope you talked about the rhetorical situation. So here we've got 2 emails from students. I made these emails up, but the one on the left is pretty common type of email that I get. And then the one on the right would be a revision of that email. So I just want to take a look at these real quick. And this is not a class about emailing. That's not what the point of this lesson is. But looking at these emails helps us introduce the idea of the lesson that we're going to get to, which is thinking about constructing this paper and thinking rhetorically. So the email on the left. Notice first that this comes from an outside email address. And when you're sending an email to your professors, you really want to make sure that you're sending it within your college email system, because for a couple reasons. One, you can see the big blue box here on the email on the left. Our system marks emails from outside the network, and sometimes it just goes ahead and filters them and sends them to spam without us ever getting them if they come from outside the network. So you want to make sure that you're sending it from the college system, because then it comes automatically without this big blue box. Also, your professor may not know who 6969 hot is at gmail.com. They may not know who that is. You want to make sure that your email reveals who you are so that the professor knows that they need to read it. This email says, I don't know what reading we're doing tomorrow. Can you tell me? Also, I missed class on Wednesday. Did I miss anything? Sorry, sore, but this class is really hard. Now, this may seem laughable, but I get emails like this all the time. Emails with misspelling, emails with no punctuation, emails that are slightly insulting. I missed class on Wednesday. Did I miss anything? Yeah, that's pretty insulting. Of course you missed something. Um, so I get the no signature. In fact, I don't even know what class this email is about. I get emails like this all the time. In fact, I've gotten some emails like this from some of you. This is a student who probably knows how to write, who knows how to write an Instagram post or knows how to text. They use writing all the time, but in this situation, they're getting the conditions of the writing, the social situation of the writing confused. Let's look at the one on the right. Dear Professor Hill, I had to miss class on Wednesday. Oh, notice that at the top, question about reading for English 132. There's a subject line that gives the professor a sense of what the reading will be, or what the question is. Dear Professor Hill, there's a start of the email. And let me just say about this, sometimes students are confused about what they should call their professors or how they should address them in an email. For me, I don't care if you call me Dear Mike or Mike. That's my name, and I make that pretty clear to students. I sign my emails with that. Whenever your professor signs an email, you can use whatever they sign with as their address in an email. But it's always safe to call them Dear Professor, because they are professors. If you know that they're doctors, Dear Doctor would be fine. If you don't know that they're doctors, just stick with Professor. It's not as appropriate to say dear Ms. or Mrs. unless you know, or dear Mr. unless you know what their gender identification is or what their social identification is. Dear Professor is the best address. Dear Professor Hill, I had to miss class English 131-29. Notice you identify which class you're in on Wednesday because of a doctor's appointment. I'm sorry for not letting you know beforehand. I'm a little confused about our reading for our next class. Are we supposed to read all of In Real Life? Yes, you are, for this week. And all the other essays before class? Or are we just expected to get the reading done before the end of the week? You need to get all that reading done. For the real answer for this class, you need to get it all done before the end of the week. I can do the work either way, but I'm feeling a little overwhelmed at the moment. So if I could take all week to finish the reading, that would be helpful. I don't mean to bother you with this. I know you probably gave the answer to my question in class. I just want to make sure I'm prepared. I really want to do well in your class, but I'm finding the summer semester to be really difficult, so please forgive my neediness. Thanks for whatever help you can provide, Steve Rogers. This is a full email with a signature at the end, and it asks almost the exact questions that the previous email did, but there's a couple things this email does. It identifies itself. It grabs attention because it gives reasons for the answer. Or for the question. It offers a recognition of the social situation. This is an email that is building a connection in a meaningful way. Now, not all professors want formal emails, but if you don't know, you should be careful to make sure that you're presenting yourself in a professional manner. And this email would allow the professor to know that you're serious, that you're thoughtful, and that you recognize that this is a professional situation. Also, it's worth noting, I get a ton of email. This summer semester, I'm teaching 3 different courses. That's with 70 students in this 7-week semester. It's a crazy, crazy busy time. And I'm getting a ton of email because they're all online. If you're not identifying yourself, identifying the problem, being thoughtful about the email you write, why should I spend time really responding in a meaningful way? It may take more time to do this, but you're not texting. You're sending an email in a professional situation. Let's move to the paper. And we're going to make a connection back to this idea of the email towards the end. But the question here is, you're writing a paper for your second college writing class, your first paper. And what you're going to be doing is taking some of the things that you've learned in your previous class, but also you're going to try to learn some of the methods of this class. And this class is a research writing class. So in order to start this paper, we're starting with a research question. Hopefully you covered that a little bit in English 131, but a research question sets you up with a something to answer in the work that you're going to produce. If you are going to learn how to fix the carburetor in your car, you might come up with a research question to figure that out. What kind of how do I go about fixing a carburetor in my car? I don't even know what a carburetor is, but there's a question. If you're going to figure out what this new disease your doctor told you is, you may approach your research by developing a question. Now, sometimes these questions are already in our brain, but as writers doing academic writing at a high level, we want to make sure we're clear about what we're trying to accomplish. And this question that I've given you, how do people of different generations define and experience connectivity with others in 2024, is giving you a clear path for both research, for research, thinking, and writing. This is different than if I gave you an assignment that said, write a paper about different generations and how they experience and defined connectivity. That's just telling you to do something. It's not telling you to figure out stuff, to go and research it. It's a minor difference, but it is important. Posing stuff as a research question helps you now to see, okay, I got to figure out different generations and what those different generations are. I got to figure out how they define something, how they experience something. I got to figure out what connectivity is, what the definition of that is, what that means overall for me and for these different generations. And I got to figure out how the year 2024 enters into this. Now, with this research question, you've got some paths and a method of research that I've already given you, but you may want to think about your initial answer. What's your initial answer to that question? How do different generations experience and define connectivity in 2024? Maybe your initial answer focuses on technological literacy. How does somebody who is 20 years old understand the technologies of connection? And then how does somebody who's 50 years old understand the technologies of connection in 2024? And that's when you think about that, you've got to think about it honestly and in reality. As somebody of a specific generation, you may think that your generation knows all the technology, knows everything about technology and literacy. But somebody who's 50 has been around this technology for a very long time. So thinking about it in a clear-headed way matters. What are the social practices? Maybe you want to focus on social practices. How do people who are 20 use technology for connectivity? How do people who are 50 use technology for connectivity? How do they connect to each other? Maybe you're looking at something big and historical, the historical moment. What are the effects of the pandemic on people who are 20 and how they learned how to be connected? And what were the effects of the pandemic on people who are 50 and how they learned how to be connected? And I can just for personal, a personal point of view here, I've got a 16-year-old, and the pandemic affected his social development. I'm 56. The pandemic affected my social connection. It did not affect my social development. So I can go out and make friends and talk to people. I don't really have much of an issue with that. My 16-year-old has a little bit more of an issue with that. His connectivity is really fostered by his technology, whereas for me, it's not. We could also move to shifting mores and beliefs. Mores is a word to describe social practices and rules, the things that guide us in society with how we connect with each other, and what is against the rules or what is accepted or not accepted. So how do people who are 20 have beliefs and mores about connection, and how do people who are 50 have mores and connections, and what has changed over that time? We also might look at age and maturity. Somebody who's 50 is a more mature communicator, connector than somebody who's 20. And how do those different age ranges affect you? In thinking about these things, you might do some brainstorming. You might write some stuff down. You might think about what are your initial answers before you go and do research. Maybe you have some initial ideas that you want to then go test using your research question. Here we're going to get more into what this class is actually focusing on, and that is how do you do research and use evidence. And for this paper, you've got a number of sources of evidence. First, you have your personal experience. What are your experiences? Why are they meaningful? How do they give you a way of answering this research question? But you also have your academic experience. What did you study in English 131 about reading and writing and connection? Did you learn in sociology 131 about how people of different generations interact? What did you learn in psychology 131 about how people of generations think about interaction? Those personal types of experiences and those academic experiences you've had are a type of evidence for you. You then also, on the right-hand side, have all the reading that we're doing for this class. You've read the essay Pseudo-Communities, which gives you a really good argument about how some people think about the idea of connection. You read Discourse Communities, which is another argument about how we connect with each other. You read the article Defining Generations, that should give you some information about people of different generations. And then you read Visitors and Aliens, that gives you a way to think about how different generations connect on a technological level. This is some real academic scholarly research that you've done, that you've been reading, that you've read carefully, that you've been taking notes on, that has prepared you to start to answer this question. And then for the bulk of this paper, the research question is leading you to primary research, doing primary research where you're doing interviews with somebody who is of a younger generation and somebody is of an older generation. Those two interviews should be giving you the primary subject matter, the primary evidence you're going to use in your paper when you start to answer this research question. We've also got something else going on here. What does reading in real life do for us? Why are we reading it as a class? Well, this is a graphic novel about connection, about how we're connecting with each other over technology. So it gives us a comparison point for thinking about our own experiences with other people's experiences. It helps us think about a cultural artifact in the real world where somebody is saying something meaningful about technological connections, and we can think about what our own meanings are. It gives us a cultural touchstone, allows us to think about how somebody of a specific experience or people of different experiences in different parts of the world experience technology, or how the mother and daughter experience technology in the book. It gives us some themes and ideas, the idea of video gaming, the idea of gold mining, the idea of being a teenager and connecting with other people. And then fiction does something for us when we read it. We often think it's just a story or just entertainment, but fiction makes us more aware of the world around us, and that makes us better at writing and connecting with other people. Fiction makes us more reflective. It makes us think about things. Whenever I read fiction, I am immediately thinking about my own arguments, my own stories, my own poetry that I might want to write. Fiction helps us understand the human condition. And there's actually been research on this, that people who read novels, people who have read a novel in the past month, are more empathetic than people who do not. And fiction are fictional stories, right? They're not actual real life. But I can't come into your home and observe you and experience your life just by hanging out there. I can go in real life and experience the life of a teenage girl and the life of a teenage boy in different countries and how they're experiencing online technological connectivity. And this helps me understand the human condition better. You've got your evidence that you've built, your personal evidence, your scholarly research, the sources you've read, and your primary evidence, the interviews you've done. You've got this idea of in real life that's giving you some stuff to think about with connectivity. And in all of these sources and all this work that you're doing, you should be building a pretty clear way to go about answering how do different generations define and experience connectivity in the year 2024. You should be able to come up with something to say about that, some meaning. which is leading us to what writing is doing. When you write a paper for a class, you are trying to connect. You're trying to connect with your professor, with your other classmates. Really, you're trying to connect with the academic discourse community that you're a part of. You're trying to develop new meanings. If you write a paper and all you say is what we already know or what we expect you're going to say, different people from different generations define connectivity by talking about their personal experiences. Yeah, well, so we know that. Give us something we don't know that comes from all the work you're doing. Writing connects us in authentic ways, and this paper is an authentic type of connection, but there are other ways that writing connects us. It connects us professionally, lets us see how we are developing professional communication. It connects us personally. It connects us socially, culturally, interculturally. We're different generations, presumably, so we are coming from different cultures. It connects us artistically, and it connects us generationally. I read something from a 50-year-old, it's different than I read something from a 20-year-old. Writing is meaningful because of the connections we build with each other. And when we think about how those connections are made and what we do to make those connections, then we think about how to enhance our writing and make it more effective. In an academic situation, you've got to think about your personal experience, your scholarly experience, and your primary research as evidence. And you've got to think about the research question you're trying to answer. And you've got to think about how you're trying to say something about the human experience through your fictional experiences. You're bringing all this together in a paper to develop meaning for somebody else, to connect in an authentic way. This leads us to something I want to remind you of. Hopefully you did talk about this in English 131, that there is a basic rhetorical situation, a basic situation of writing, of creating messages for people that we have to think about. And in any situation, there are specific ways that situation meets up with different elements. Any situation of writing or any rhetorical situation has a purpose. There is one person who has a purpose there to try to do something for somebody else. Or there's a joint purpose between the two people who are communicating. There is authority. You have authority in this paper. The authority comes from your personal experience, from your scholarly research, from your primary research. You have authority in this paper, and that authority allows you to engage rhetorically. You have an audience. You think about what your audience needs, what they're getting out of this, how they're going to be persuaded. You have a message, something you want to say that you're going to try to prove and persuade somebody else to accept. There is a genre. You're not writing a hip-hop song. You're not writing a sonnet. You're not writing a love letter. You are writing an academic paper. There's a genre. There's a social context that you're writing in. That is, what is happening in the world today that demands that we speak with each other in a certain way. There's a social context. There's a historical context. The paper that you write today would be different than the one students would have written 10 years ago, which would be different than the one students would write from 10 years from now. You also have to think about others' ideas, and that is both other researchers, other people in this class who are writing, the secondary research you're doing. You have to think about others' ideas and how they impact your writing, and you think about your voice and your style and how you want to write. This question of the rhetorical situation is how we go about becoming effective communicators, how we go about connecting with others in real ways by really understanding the rhetorical situation. And this assignment that you're writing, this paper that's going to try to figure out connectivity between different generations, it is going to try to meet this rhetorical situation of the assignment, just like an email you might write to your professor tries to meet the rhetorical situation of the assignment. And you can be really successful or less successful depending on how you think about these things. So ultimately, this is a question we have to ask anytime we engage in a writing or a communication situation. What do you want to say? To whom do you want to say it? And how are you going to write this? How are you going to say this in a way that helps you build connectivity yourself, connection with others? You are in control of this writing situation. You have to take control, and you have to understand the situation enough, the tools that you have enough, the research that you have enough to be able to say something meaningful. So what do you want to say? Now go say it. We'll talk to you next week.